On this episode,
If we're in a simulation, how do we even have the ability to dream?
My dreams are saying that I'm either going to a parallel world, which is a multiverse idea.
For me, dreams dispel the simulation theory.
It's a hard drive in your head.
Okay, if you want to call your brain a hard drive, sure, we can do that.
What does it mean to you when I say up, up, down, down, left, right, A, B, A, B?
Oh, it sounded like something I used to do in Mortal Kombat or some shit like that.
Raise your glass to mysteries, cocktails and conspiracies. Dive into these histories, cocktails and conspiracies. Raise your glass to mysteries, cocktails and conspiracies. Uncover those anomalies, cocktails and conspiracies.
Let's start by accepting a chilling possibility. Everything around you that you think is real, the device you're watching this on, the room that surrounds you, your memories, even your consciousness, might be nothing more than sophisticated lines of code in a vast computer simulation. Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be, whether you're tuning in across the nation, around the world, or from behind the desk watching us as you manipulate our every move. My name is Shane Skwarek, here with my Huffle colleague, Mr. Philipps. We are your conspiracy realists back once again, and tonight we're talking the simulation theory. Are you ready, Mr.
Cheers.
Philipps? I mean, you've really
Cheers, buddy.
struggled with these events that we're doing, these recordings that we're doing lately. You just can't figure it out.
You know what it is? I think it's a technology issue, and only if I knew somebody that was like good with technology, maybe that ran their own small business consulting firm dedicated to technology, they could fix that for me. But I don't know anybody like that, so.
Yeah, if only that person would have dropped off a goddamn laptop at your front steps to just
Who'd have
allow
thunk
you
it?
to sign this stuff, and the guy still doesn't use it. Speaking of
have thunk
technology,
it?
that's a perfect segue for our first sponsor. But we're not really going to see that right now if you're on the live stream, so you're going to have to bear with us. In any case, we're here, Mr. Phillips. We're on Simulation Theory. Cheers. Raise your glass to mystery, cocktails,
Cheers,
and conspiracies. Hope you guys like our new theme song. If you're listening to this on YouTube, Spotify, I guess really wherever else you get podcasts from.
Yeah.
Make sure you're subscribing and liking and following along as well. But it's pretty much our favorite song now, wouldn't you say?
Let me tell you something. I can't stop singing it. It's too catchy.
It is really good. But both my drink and our new theme song, and I'm really digging it. Ironically enough, it kind of ties right into our episode tonight, Mr. Phillips, says that song was made entirely by artificial intelligence. And
That it
that's
was?
really it was, yeah. I think people are kind of shocked when they hear it. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to get these audio files then to come on and post. And I knew it. I
Right.
knew it all along. It definitely doesn't have any life to it. Yeah. You didn't know
Couldn't
it
care
until he
less.
tells you. Don't worry about it.
I like it. Sounds good.
It's catchy enough, and I think it does the trick for what we're looking to do. Once we get some money flowing here, maybe we'll have a cool band like Downstate or something do it for us. But until then, that $10 AI song for unlimited edits, by the way, works just as well. Simulation theory.
I want one request. One request.
Oh boy, here we go.
I want Big Bang Baby to do our song.
I could probably get him to do it. He might actually watch this. I'm not really sure. He
Hit up
says
Paul.
he does.
Paul, if you're
He wants to
watching,
be a
hit us
guest
up.
on here too.
Do
this
our
will be another,
song.
like, little clip with my Corsetti clip. We'll try to get him going here. Hey, he would do it if we gave him some guidelines on it. I think he would actually do it for us, no problem. All right. So for the third time, it's the charm now, Mr. Phillips. Simulation theory. Just to kind of set the stage, because I don't know that everybody quite knows what this is. So I'm just going to read you the basic concept as you can get it on the search result. Simulation theory proposes that our reality is actually an artificial simulation and likely a computer program created by a more advanced civilization. Now, before we kind of dive into the weeds of where this came from, what we think about it, and some hints that maybe prove that evident, initial thoughts off the cuff.
So similar to the multiverse, it's one of those things where it's so difficult to grasp for me personally.
Yeah.
That I just, it kind of blows my mind when I really start to think about it. That's part of what, I mean, I should have started with, I don't think that's the case. I don't believe in the simulation theory. I don't think we're in a simulation. I feel pretty strongly about that. And because of that, or I should say, why I feel that way is because part of it is it's just too mind-boggling to even comprehend. But then we'll get into some other things tonight as to why I feel like that's not the case. What about you?
Simulation theory, I started the same as you, and I did not subscribe to the idea at all. Coming from that technology background, and despite the fact that I've made my best efforts to make you a technophile or yourself, hasn't worked.
Yeah.
When I think simulation, and this is probably where my disconnect has always been, is when I think simulation, I am thinking I'm turning on my PUBG tonight. I'm controlling this character. I'm jumping him out of an airplane. He's flying down. He's looting, and he's going after a bunch of people the entire time. That's what I'm getting from that's what my mind wraps around. And the idea that we are now just characters in a giant Sims game to me seems outrageous, absurd, wild, obnoxious, crazy.
Agreed.
As I've sort of consumed this conspiracy a little bit more, I've taken a different perspective. And I think the word simulation is where I'm getting hung up on. And we'll go into a little bit of why that is. And I don't want to say what I think it could be akin to until the very end, because that's basically going to spoil our whole trajectory, our whole build right here. So let's dive into it here. Historical origins is probably the best place to start here. The idea of a simulation theory really came in a 2000 paper by Nick Bostrom called Are You Living in a Computer Simulation? Very blunt, very straightforward. But that wasn't really the first presence of such a thing. There's philosophical records from Plato, the allegory of the cave, as far back as 380 BCE, basically saying that humans are only perceiving shadows of Dude, can't even speak tonight. Hold on. We're going to have to drink on that one.
Need some more cocktail. Drink. There you go, Mr. Butters. We're drinking.
Ooh, that Tanqueray hits hard tonight, man. I haven't had that in a while.
Oh, baby.
So humans are only perceiving shadows of true reality. Now, philosophically, when you talk about any of these old school philosophers, their words can really be morphed into whatever you want. They'll be morphed into, you can assume whatever you want to assume. Won't hold much stake in that, but it is an interesting thing to think about, and it does tie into some other theories that we've kind of covered on this podcast, and partly why I wanted to even talk about this tonight. And me and Mr. Phillips have, as we got more comfortable with this, we used to spend the whole week planning this out, a little behind the scenes for you all. Now it's just like earlier in the day, one of us shoots a text the other. What do you think about this? Yeah, sounds good. And we try to dive into this just with the thoughts on our head. I feel like it's a little more natural for you guys.
It is. It's fresh.
It is, and I feel like we have a lot of fun digging into it. So the philosophical aspect of it is certainly one that kind of resonates in the back of my head. The next time around that it's really pronounced is René Descartes talks about the evil demon hypotheses, questioning the reliability of sensory perception. Again, are we really perceiving everything that's around us as the way it is, or are we perceiving it how we want to perceive that? And sometimes, Mr. Phillips, kind of stepping out of simulation theory, if you use that in everyday life, right? Take any situation. I don't want to really dive into anything political because that'll be an immediate flag and a limited tag for us. So we're not going to do that. But let's say sports, perfect sports metaphor, because you're in sports, I'm in sports, we're like the same team.
Yep.
Saquon Barkley doesn't sign with the Giants. He goes and signs with the Philadelphia Eagles. It's the same exact scenario, right? But there's people that perceive that as a really good thing. There's people that perceive that as a really bad thing, right? And what is it really? There's, the old, not an anecdote, but the saying, there's always three sides to the story.
Sure.
My side, your side, and the truth, right? And so I think that kind of plays into that a little bit, maybe on a grander scale here. Arguably the most popular.
Could I just stop real quick? That sounds like that just sounds like mumbo jumbo bullshit. Not what you just said, but that whole thought process. 100%. Like that is just, to me, just
it's philosophical.
Like Like, what? Just stop with the bullshit. I'm too much of a pragmatist. Like, I can't just like, I can't get with that thought process. It's not in me. It's not in my nature. Not in my being.
You're going really deep philosophical. You're a very analytical thinker, which is partly what makes this show really good. Is we both come from an analytic standpoint, but I have slowly started to, I don't want to say open my mind, but morph to some of these other ideas. I don't buy into them, but I understand the context in which they're coming from. And I think you do too. It's not to say you don't.
It depends. No, it depends on the subject matter and what we're talking about, you know.
For sure. But I think
no.
The premise of the conspiracy realist idea, right? That the whole initial brand we developed was because we are coming from these, we're entering these conspiracy theories with a very realistic, very analytical mindset. We're not just hearing it and like, you know, if I burn some incense, all of a sudden I'm going to elevate to the sky. We certainly want some of these things to be true, but doesn't necessarily mean that.
Dude, I want all of it to be true. How fun would it be if just think about everything that we've talked about? Listen, some of it's dark, right? But
yeah.
Some of it's very dark. But a good majority of them, the fun ones,
yeah.
How fun would it be if those were real? That would be awesome.
I'd like a lot of them. I certainly wouldn't say all. I'd like a lot of them to be real. And maybe they are. I mean, if we are living in a simulation. The most famous pop culture reference to the simulation, of course, Mr. Phillips, is what? Come on, man. I know you don't watch a lot of movies, but
I got it. The Matrix.
The Matrix. There's a Matrix trilogy.
I saw it once a really long time ago.
I actually really didn't like the movies at all, which is ironic because it's like right up my alley, like sci-fi, futuristic, like dystopian. It's everything I love in like a good movie. Action-packed, a lot of technology in it, and I enjoyed the first one. It was okay. I didn't go crazy about it. Like I know people that are obsessed that watch them religiously over and over again. I tend to think that, and of course it's being not rebooted, but continued on. So we're going to get another one soon. I think a lot of people that, or maybe my perception of the Matrix at that particular time was exactly what you just said, is like, it just feels like too much mumbo jumbo bullshit. And like my grasp, my interest in technology and like spacefaring type movies, like the Star Wars franchise or Star Trek franchise, like what drew me to those is because they feel like they had a level of plausibility that I can wrap my head around. Of course, it seems far-fetched and out there, but the idea that our civilization becomes spacefaring and go out and fight these wars literally in space with other civilizations, totally possible. I mean, we do it here, right?
Yeah,
so
we
what's
have
the
Space
difference?
Force.
Right, and like, yes, we're all a human species, but there's different races, there's different colors, there's different creeds. So it's like, it's no different than going out into space and doing it. So those science fiction ideas, easy for me to wrap my head around.
While they were not good movies, I agree with you.
Well, that's not even for this podcast.
Any chance I can stab it, I do.
Just really not getting into. I didn't mean to sizzle on there. But the Matrix movies were always difficult for me because, you know, it's one of those things where, like you said, you kind of got to buy into the concept. And I thought the concept was interesting.
It is.
I loved what was the Leonardo DiCaprio one? Inception.
That was a good movie. That was a very
similar
good movie.
Similar concept that I loved. But it just, the way it was presented was different because it was a dream state, right? Versus being in the simulation. Now, those are miniature simulations.
Yeah. What's funny is that, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but dreams to me are a reason why the simulation theory can't be real. But continue.
Oh, well, we're going to go there. That's a great point. Very great point. So those are really just the context of where these movies came from. For those that didn't see The Matrix, I mean, if you're really young, maybe I guess it's a possibility. I assume pop culture, you kind of just, it's one of those things you just know what they are. Like The Godfather, Goodfellas, like everyone knows what they are, right? Most people haven't probably seen, at least in this generation, any of the American Pie movies, but everyone knows the word MILF, right? It's pop culture. But The Matrix is basically, you know, they're putting their minds inside of this simulation and living this life where they can actually die, but they're actually just hooked up with something in the back of their head. And then, you know, you always talk about the red pill or the blue pill, and one will take you back to your real life. The other will kind of continue living within this matrix. The long and short of the simulation theory is that we are acting within the matrix. We are in the matrix, and we're just not necessarily aware of it. So that's where we're going to kind of start off. Are you good with me so far?
I'm ready to rock and roll, baby. Let's go. Let's keep
All
on
right.
trucking.
Do you have a trajectory where you want to start? Or you want me to start throwing some ideas?
Give me some ideas. As I mentioned earlier, I feel pretty strongly that we are not in any sort of simulation, and I've heard,
Right.
all the various different reasons as to why we are. So let's discuss some of those things.
Okay. Well, what's the one that you've heard off the top of your head?
So I was actually just listening to somebody describe how atoms react, or was it protons specifically react?
Oh, that's my scientific one. Why do you have to jump into
we don't
the
have to
potatoes
start
of it?
there. We don't have to start at that
come
one.
on. Yeah, so we'll come back to that. That's actually the quantum observer. It's a double split experiment. It's the
Right.
quantum observer effect. I want to get into that because that one's really fascinating, but I don't want to get into
weird.
that yet. It's very sciencey, and it's
And we'll
high level
bore
thing.
everybody if we start about that right now.
All right, I don't want to dive into that right off the gate. Come on.
So do you want to go Mandela?
We can go. Well, let's go Mandela Effect. Right. So, do you want, give some context on what the Mandela Effect is first?
So the Mandela Effect essentially is when a large group of people have a different memory of an event or anything in general than what actually happened in reality. So, for example, people remember. I mean, the name comes from Nelson Mandela. People believe that Nelson Mandela died. People remember watching his funeral procession on TV. It was broadcast for over 2 hours. His wife is walking next to his casket. None of that ever actually happened in our reality, but a large group of people swear that that happened, right? That's just one example, probably the best one because that's where the name comes from.
That's literally where the name comes from, yeah.
Exactly. In a nutshell, that's what the Mandela Effect is.
We did an entire
fact,
episode of the Mandela Effect.
I was just going to say, go back and watch it if you didn't. Go back and watch it if you didn't. It's episode blah, blah, blah. Check it out. We already talked about the Mandela Effect.
I don't remember the episode. We've actually done so many now that I can't remember them off the top of my head, so that's a good thing.
I have no idea. I know, right? Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Look at us. Look at us.
So the Mandela Effect is an interesting one. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, the way that you tie that into it being the way that you tie the Mandela Effect into the simulation theory is that the simulation is being altered, right? And so there's something in the code, something within the programming in the simulation that's being altered, thus altering our actual perception of reality. And that's why the Mandela Effect is the Mandela Effect.
Right. To kind of elaborate on that a little bit more is a lot of the times when you've heard people talk about the Mandela Effect, they're talking about quote unquote glitches in the matrix and likening it back to the movie. What ends up happening at certain points is there are quite literally glitches in the computer program. Not unlike if you're a video gamer and you can kind of like you cheat yourself outside of the map, kind of glitch outside of there. That sometimes does happen in games. That happen obviously in the Matrix. And what people are suggesting is that that's actually happening in real life sometimes. That is the Fruit of the Loom logo. It's another really popular one we talked about. That is Jif versus Jiffy Peanut Butter. The Berenstein Bears versus the Bernstein Bears. There's a number of them. And again, I implore you to go back and watch that Mandela Effect episode. It's wild. There's so many of them. Fruit of the Loom logo is probably my favorite just because I vividly remember it of all, just no question to ask. Effectively, what Tim is saying too is the glitch within our reality is that maybe that was the way it was and it was changed at some point or something happened to our simulation and it broke it, right? And we're still remembering remnants of it. Maybe the computer rebooted itself and it's got some legacy code in there or just for whatever reason it didn't clear off. There's a movie called Free Guy that just came out with Ryan Reynolds pretty recently, and that is about a Sims-like environment where artificial intelligence is starting to blossom and get consciousness within the game. And part of the reason he realizes that is because there's a glitch in the game and he can actually see this other game that this free world is built on in the blinds, because when the developers, the evil mastermind developers stole the game, they didn't change the shadowing. So he's seeing this other world and it's changing his perception and developing him, like he's building his code up. And so again, another very modern, very pop culture example of what not the Mandela Effect. Now I'm thrown off. What simulation theory could be in a very tangible way.
Now let me ask you a question, real quick.
Yeah.
As we're talking about code in computers, you're a computer guy.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You are very, very familiar with code. You can write code.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the answer to this. You are the perfect person to ask this question to.
Mm-hmm.
If you were, I don't know, let's just take a website as an example, okay? And say that you are writing new code for something additional that you want to do with the website.
Yep.
Can you, while you are writing new code for this new thing that you want to do, can that unintentionally affect code that's already written on that website and change something?
Of course, absolutely.
All right.
All
So
the
that's a
time.
very interesting thought.
If you think about a website right now, and I'm going to try to dumb this down, no offense, but I'm going to dumb this down a little bit so it's easy for
Please.
everyone to understand. When you go to any website, right, you see whatever you see there. It doesn't really make a difference. Back in the day, when I first started to learn websites, every page was sort of self-contained, right? It was whatever was on that page. Whenever you wrote that code, it was part of that code. You really didn't pull elements from other places. You could, it was a little more advanced, but the majority of the web was static pages, is what they would call it. Everything is encoded in that one file. Now it's moved more to like a template base. So those that have any concept of business or web development at all probably heard the name WordPress out there, or content management system, those buzzwords. Don't need to know what it is. Doesn't really matter, but as long as you're familiar with it. Effectively, all that's doing is it's allowing you to create a template, a core set of pages or modules, and automatically generate out all the interior pages. So it's actually happening when you go to a WordPress website. I always tell clients this. It's a great another sponsor opportunity here. But I always tell clients this. It actually doesn't make a difference if you want a one-page website or a 1,000-page website, because I'm building the frame around it. The content that pops up in the middle is just a database. It's just pulling in data. Now, to your question, what happens is when you build this, use a style sheet or CSS. The style sheet has specific variables attached to it to control elements within the website. Some of them are very common, like a paragraph or a heading, right? So that's going to have generally the same exact styling throughout the website. You want that brand consistency. Sometimes you have pages that you want to look a little bit different, so you restyle those. That's where you can make errors. You could do it in scripting and stuff like that too, but that's just overcomplicating the example here. If you tweak something with a style sheet, right? It's got a class name. If you make a second class with the same name, or you tweak it, you can use the same class. If I have a set of parameters for a heading and I don't realize it and I add another parameter later, it could pick that too. And it could change it. And it could change it periodically. It could render it one way, and you can refresh it somewhere else and render it completely different. And that's part of the struggle is sometimes coding, right? You have to have very good code. You have to be very on top of it. But to your question, that is 100% plausible. And again, aligns itself really well to the idea that if this is a scripted simulation, okay, well, it's totally possible. That's a really good segue into kind of what I wanted to actually talk about. So unintentional there is we live in a very mathematical universe, right? So all the laws of physics are expressed as elegant mathematical equations. How would that be? Everything in the universe is always explained out by math. How would that be? From, the number of leaves on a flower to, rings around the solar system, the way we circle around the sun and the way the moon orbits us, everything can be broken down into a very predictable, I guess, or understandable mathematical equation. The flower of life is just that, right? Like you always see it, geometric shapes, and you see geometry in everything in life. I mean, you can cut down a tree and it's, circular to tell you exactly what it is, how many years it is. That doesn't seem accidental. It doesn't seem by chance. Like if you were to go into, the Amazon rainforest, right? And there's a particular type of snake that's there and it bites you and it's got poison in it. Well, there's also a native plant in that same rainforest that'll be the antidote, right? Like there's cause and effect. Now that kind of comes off the math as well, but it leans into the next episode. Like there's an answer. There's a reason and there's an answer for everything. Doesn't seem coincidental to me, Tim. It seems designed.
No, look, that is very, very weird, right? And specifically, as it pertains to math, most of those numbers are correlated or pertain to the Fibonacci sequence, right? And the Fibonacci sequence, and specifically, oh my goodness gracious, I'm going to forget exactly what it's called. The golden something. Can't remember exactly what it's called. If I were a better co-host, I would, but I don't. Look, it's weird and it's very tough to explain. It's one of those things, and people pass it off as, look, we're humans, we want to create order out of chaos, right? The universe, our world, our reality as we know it is chaos, right? It is chaos up and down, through and through. So because we strive for order, we want order, we're looking for those patterns, and we're choosing to pick those things out. And so, as you alluded to earlier, we like to talk about things off the cuff, so it's not like we did a lot of research onto this. But what I would be really interested to do some further research on is, okay, while we can use mathematics, specifically the Fibonacci sequence, and we could look at all of these similarities, right, and how they all align with the Fibonacci sequence, as you mentioned, the flower petals on a flower, right, rings on a tree, the distance between your neck, your chin and your collarbone, right, like it's all tied together. And it's really, really interesting. But how many other things, and I don't know the answer to this, maybe you could ChatGPT it, but how many other things in the universe don't follow that law, don't follow this Fibonacci sequence? I can't say that word properly. I don't know what that answer is, but I'd be interested to kind of find out.
The golden ratio, Mr. Phillips.
The golden ratio, right there it is.
It was right
I'm so
there
close.
I think there's always going to be exceptions, and I think a lot of people tend to look at surface level things like, oh yeah, like well, my fingernails are different sizes or my fingers are a little off, and they kind of forget about the parallels of that, not realizing that your DNA is wrapped in pairs the whole way through. You always have 2 arms, 2 legs. Like there's so many other patterns within science, like that's built, or I guess within life that's built.
Right.
Again, this is something we've covered in so many episodes, and why simulation is so interesting is because you have to ask yourself the question, again, is it by design? Is it intelligent design? And that's another theory, another discussion. Is it by chance? Are we that one, if you've ever watched Avengers, well, it would be Infinity War before Endgame, but, are we that one chance in the millions and millions and millions and millions of probabilities that everything kind of fell this way? That's totally plausible. It's when you watch movies, kind of using that as the crutch that we're using as examples tonight. It's always funny when you watch like a movie or TV show, and like the characters have like this crazy arc, and people are always like, oh, well, why would that happen? How would they have survived that? Blah, blah, blah. Well, because if they didn't survive that, you wouldn't be watching their story, right? And so are we watching our story because this all did happen? That's the only reason our story exists. So is it chance? Is it intelligent design? I think it's hard to say either way. And, as you said at the top, it's really hard to kind of wrap your head around those specific things. That's why I want to kind of touch base on this double split experiment that you alluded to a little bit earlier. And I'm going to read a lot of this because I'm not smart enough to be able to recite this off the top of my head. But
dude,
this kind of
I'm
goes
not smart
into
enough
the
to
idea.
understand it.
I've listened to it. I've actually heard about the experiment 4 or 5 times right now, and I've heard the full story, the full example, and I pulled up notes on it again because I understand it. I just don't know how to necessarily dictate it coherently off the cuff. But what I found fascinating about this is because it sort of answers those questions that we're asking. It's like, well, is this designed, and is there some sort of manipulation happening? So the double slit experiment was first performed by Thomas Young in 1801, but was later revisited and reinterpreted in the context of quantum mechanics. And so here's how it works. Basic setup is you have a screen with 2 slits. Double slit experiment, pretty obvious there. Behind the screen, there's a detector that's capturing particles, which is usually light, but could also be electrons or really any particles for the sake of the experiment. There's the unobserved scenario. This is when particles like your electrons or photons are fired at the slits one by one, and no one is watching which slit they go through. They behave like waves. Instead of going through one slit or the other, the particles seem to go through both slits simultaneously, interfering with themselves, and they create like a wave pattern on the detector screen. So as they're going through, instead of just being dot, 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 it's like a wave. It's going through both of them. So this characteristic of waves, not particle, which is interesting. The observed scenario. When you place the detector to observe which slit the particle is passing through, the situation changes dramatically. The particle behaves like a particle rather than a wave. So instead of going through both slits, I keep saying slits, it takes a definitive path through either one or the other. And the interference pattern disappears, replaced by 2 single bands typical of particles. I'm going to see real quickly if I can pull up a screen share of what this is because I've actually seen a video of it performed. Let me see if I can get maybe at least an image of it.
Well, while you're pulling that up, I think the only thing... So I've heard about this many times, and I've watched many different things about it, and it never made any sense to me until I heard it described this way. And it was video games. So when you're playing a video game, like we're probably going to play PUBG later on, the whole world is not rendered in at one time, right? If I'm at one side of the map, the other side of the map is not rendered in for me, okay? So it's there. I can't actually see it. And so... like a simulation, if we're not watching it, right, this is the unobserved part of the test, it's going to behave in a different way than when you are actually watching it because one's quote-unquote rendered in and the other one actually isn't. And that's the only way that it made sense to me. And I was finally like, oh, I kind of get that now. Kind of.
I mean, that's a really easy way to say it. Yes. So, but then that begs the question is like, if that's the case and you're relating video games here, why is it different or how would that be applicable to real life? Why is that happening in real life? Why does something have to quote unquote render in for us to see it? So here's an example of when you're observing the double slit experiment. What ends up happening is the photons are coming in from the left-hand side and they're hitting and they're making clear dots, right? That's what's happening when you're observing it. When you're not observing it, what's actually happening is going to be, let me slide this image over here. Let's just share this tab instead. When you're not observing it, look what's happening.
It's completely different. Like completely different.
This is it's a wave. It's creating a completely separate pattern versus just the dots.
Yeah, and see, so that makes absolutely no sense to me at all whatsoever.
Right. Well, that's the experiment, and that's why it's so confusing. Now, this has like an added twist to it. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go into a little bit more of what this description is of it, and then we'll kind of go into the little twist. So the shift in behavior based on whether or not the particle observed is called the observer effect. The key to understanding this lies in the concept of the wave function in quantum mechanics. Okay, I'm going to just jump through that because that starts to go into a lot of superposition, a lot of stuff on physics and quantum mechanics. It's not really important for our conversation tonight. But the bizarre part about the particle is that it actually doesn't decide where it's going to go until it's actually observed. So when it thinks that no one's looking, it actually acts like a wave and it goes through both slits. And once the measurement is made to observe the particle, it acts like the particle going through the slit and collapsing the wave function into definitive state. Now, what does that mean? During this experiment, to try to prove or disprove this theory, what they did is they started flicking on and off the detector, right? And it would change its behavior based on whether you're now observing it or not observing it. Is that not strange?
That is weird.
It's rendering.
It's very strange.
Right?
Now, let's play devil's advocate real quick. What if, and look, I'm sure these scientists who are much smarter than the both of us combined already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask a simple, dumb question, because that's what we do on the show.
What if, dumb questions, Tim.
What if whatever they're turning on and off is emitting some sort of frequency that's affecting the way that those particles behave?
Because it's not necessarily the detector causing the frequency. Like, it's a great question. Yeah, I don't know that I have the answer for that. I believe that it's the same as if like you were to look at it, right? If I'm staring at it, it's shooting dots. I think that's how the experiment really starts is I'm watching it, I'm visualizing it, it's just shooting through. But when I'm not watching it, it's giving a different pattern because you're getting the end result.
Right, but the observer is still a piece of electronics, so one would imagine it's emitting some sort of frequency, no?
Maybe it could just be a camera. That's on. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that I have the answer to that. An honest answer that would make a lot of sense. I don't really know. I think from a philosophical standpoint, the idea is that all outcomes are possible, and so when you're not observing something, it's like not Pandora's box. It is oh god, the cat in the box, Schrodinger's cat.
Gotcha.
You ever heard Schrodinger's cat?
I want to call it the cat in the box from now on. Yeah,
the cat in the box.
Have.
Yeah. So Schrodinger's cat, for those not familiar, basically just means if you had a cat in a box and they had a plate of poison in there, you don't know if the cat is alive or dead until you open the box. And what Schrodinger basically hypothesized, or I guess stated, which again is philosophical, right? It's conceptual. It's, you kind of got to wrap your head around it, is when the box is closed and you haven't looked into it, the cat is both alive and it's dead. It's got a 50-50 shot of being one or the other. You don't know if it ate the food or not. It could be alive, it could be dead, but you'll never know what it is until you open it and observe it. And that's basically the physical, that's basically the double split experiment right there. Well, I was going to say in the easiest terms possible, but Schrodinger's cat is even more of a mindfuck. So
I was
maybe
gonna
not
say, I don't think it's that easy, but
what's interesting, kind of stepping beyond that, is our penchant for programming in and of ourselves. So everything from like religion to human desire, like it generally feels like it's programmed. The parameters kind of set within the simulation to sort of direct us in a way. Like we aren't just like born and just like lay there, right? And like if you look into the wilderness, into the wild, like a new baby animal, pick an animal, is born and it doesn't get absolutely demolished and consumed by its parents or something. You have like an instinct, right? So it's like, again, it's the likelihood of that being and there are some species that do abandon their young, right? And their fish will eat other fish. Not saying it's not possible, but the idea that any species can really survive and just doesn't immediately die when you're a baby and completely inept for all of history, it seems like that's got to be right. Like there's got to be some sort of an intelligent design there to give you the knowledge or the know-how to get to that point.
Yeah, look, I agree. And you can look at that a few different ways depending upon what your mindset is, right? Is it a higher power, a higher calling, the purpose of life, the meaning of life, right? I don't think that one and two are the same. That because those things that you just mentioned are true, that means that we have to be living within a simulation. You know, I don't. It's look, those are also fantastic questions, right? Like, why do we have this innate sense to survive and, you know, nourish ourselves and eventually reproduce and then, you know, grow our you know, make sure that our offspring survives and continues to pass on our genome. Why is that? I don't know. That's a very weird thing in and of itself, but I don't think it's necessarily tied to simulation. I just for me personally, I have a tough time kind of connecting the two. And granted, right, and this brings about an even deeper question, right? It's the whole simulation versus God and or one or two in the same type of thing, right? So if we are in a simulation, I don't want to jump too far off track right now, but if we are in a simulation, is that God? But is God and it's all kind of the same thing. So kind of doesn't really make any difference at all at the end of the day.
Well, so
I feel like I just said a lot about nothing.
I wanted to. No, you said a lot about a lot, because that's really where I wanted to maybe not end this, but land at some point. Is I keep using the phrase intelligent design, and that's where I was able to sort of differentiate myself from simulation theory, which I think is a video game. I think is PUBG. I think I'm jumping in. I'm in a contained map. I can't run outside the map. There's a definitive start, there's a definitive end, and there's objectives. It's objectives. That's what video gaming has been for us growing up. That to me is a simulation. Intelligent design, the idea that somebody planted us here, may it be an alien, maybe it be future humans, may it be a god, whatever it might be. When I start to think that in terms of that, replace the word simulation with intelligent design, well, then that all makes sense. Then the idea that the whole earth is mathematical because we had a creator makes a lot of sense. But that's where I'm going to give you a new video game. And this is where simulation theory comes into play. You remember when I talked to you about playing that game, No Man's Sky?
I've heard of it. Yep.
No Man's Sky is something called a procedurally generated game. Came out well over a decade ago, absolutely flopped out of the gate because it promised to have a vast, unlimited universe and all these other features. It flopped terribly. Crushed in all reviews and whatnot. People hated it. The developers didn't give up on it, and they kept trying to fix that mistake. And to this day, it continuously rolls out updates. Incredible game, had a huge resurgence, tons of players out there now, super popular, and they're still rolling out updates for free for the original, whatever you paid for it. The
Do
game
they shut
itself,
it down for a full 8 hours like Pub does?
Shockingly, no. So here you go. Even better than that. This is going to blow your mind. So talk about PUBG shuts down their servers to do server maintenance for a full day at the peak times for East Coast people, West Coast people, anybody in the United States. For a full day, they got to shut it down to server maintenance. And you know the size of a PUBG game too, given what it is. No Man's Sky is under about, I want to say, I don't know, maybe it's like 10 megabytes, 20 megabytes. It's very small. It's a very small game. Or, no, 10 gigabytes. I'm sorry. I'm throwing off my numbers here.
I was going to say
like
10 megs. That's tiny.
Yeah.
Still, comparatively, it's not a very large game.
Yeah,
right.
It's like 5 to 10 gigabyte game. It's a very small game. When I say procedurally generated, it means that when you go into the game, when you first launch the game, you are going to start on a world that no other player in our world has ever started on. It creates the world for you instantaneously. It creates everything. It creates the biome that you're in. It creates all the fauna that is there. It creates all the creatures that are there. The game is infinite, which means you can continue to traverse the galaxy one planet, one solar system at a time. And depending on where you started, you will explore things for the first time and be naming them. You will explore plants, you will explore animals that are different. They are unique. Now, of course, there are some redundancies and similarities eventually, especially with fauna.
Sure.
But you are exploring all this stuff. It's only until you start to jump in with other players or you go into, they have like community type center type things that you jump into and you can transfer to other galaxies. The purpose of the game is to kind of get towards the center of the galaxy, right? But as an infinite game, you can follow the storyline, but you don't have to. You can do anything you want in the game. It is completely not open world, but open universe. And again, procedurally generated, which means none of it exists until you're there.
That is
So
cool.
it's not there. Doesn't exist until you're there. So think about that. And now think about that in the context of our human life in a simulation. We can do that. We can create our own simulation where nothing exists until we observe it for 10 gigabytes or less. That's a video game.
That is pretty cool. Not my kind of game, but it is pretty cool that they have the ability to do that, especially when you connect it to what we're talking about tonight.
And there are millions of people playing it around the world that you can engage with if you find them. There's ways to find them, of course, and you can give coordinates and stuff like that. And they've got systems in the game. I'm not saying that, but like if you were to just start the game and get whatever your initial ship is and just bounce planet to planet or maybe solar system one to the next, hop on the next, it would quite literally be. I mean, they even have in the game, which I think is one of the coolest features. When you're in your ship and you're flying from planet to planet, you've like boosters and stuff in your ship, right? So you can boost to go faster. But if you just press like the thruster itself, it tells you the time it's going to take to get there, but it tells you in our time. So if I'm just doing a normal thruster for one planet X, it'll say like it'll take you 3 days to get there. And I can hold that thruster for 3 straight days and go there. And it's the same thing on the planet itself. Like if you go from one spot to another and like you don't, arch up or use boosters and stuff, you could go straight and fly for an hour or drive for an hour, or you can go up out of the atmosphere and come back down. And again, the mechanics in it are very much aligned to real life. And again, I emphasize that this is a 10 gigabyte or less game where we are crafting worlds, like entire worlds, and you are now molding them, and you can build ecosystems. You can mate different forms of animals and hatch eggs. You can build structures, and you can discover. So with that in mind, with that in perspective, the idea of the simulation started to strike to me a little bit more because, all right, well, we are doing this. And, when you extract that word simulation out, you replace it with intelligent design, that starts to add up to me. I think the hook for me, why I started to open my eyes and not just think this was hodgepodge, was because you're getting people like Elon Musk has talked about it.
Yeah.
Neil deGrasse Tyson has talked about it. He's not huge on it, but he's starting to talk about it a little bit more, that it's possible. Elon firmly believes we're in it. Rosman Verk is an MIT scientist. He's really into it. Max Tegmark, a renowned physicist, he's bought into it. And Ray Kurzweil has been active in saying that we are in a simulation. Ray Kurzweil is a noted futurist, for those not familiar. He has been accurate in about 80% of his predictions. Perfect accuracy, 80%. A small portion of that has been like partly accurate to like the date too. I mean, he's predicted a lot. He's got a book out there that says all the things he got right, all the things he got wrong, all the things he got partially right. Fascinating guy. When you see those names, and these are brilliant people, way smarter than you and I think there's a divide, though. And it goes back to what you said earlier, Tim. Sometimes when you start thinking like outside the box, right? You're not thinking analytically. You kind of get these like loopy ideas, and that's how you wrap your brain around this stuff. Some of these names I mentioned are those types of minds. Like Elon is an analytical guy, of course, but like he's that upper echelon. Like he can think way big picture and conceptualize things, do it analytically, but he knows how to kind of jump between those sides of his brain.
Right. His brain works differently.
His brain's working all. I mean, he said again on Rogan just the other day, "I am an alien." Nobody believes when I said I am an alien. So maybe he actually is. He's insisting that he's an alien. Elon, alien.
Look, if there's ever one walking amongst us, it's him, baby.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And thanks, guys.
Now,
I appreciate it. Thanks for sending them.
I know. Well, some people wouldn't feel that way, but I certainly do.
Well.
So I guess the next question, Phillips, is if we are in a simulation, why?
Maybe somebody just wants to have fun. Well, to your point, right? If we have the ability, look, and this is what's weird, and I kind of get freaked out when I think about it, right? Mm-hmm. If we're in a simulation, that means that we could all be on some 10-year-old's desktop in Montana right now, just on his PC, right?
Yep.
How weird is that? It could be any number of things. It could be any number of things, right? Like there's no, it doesn't mean that we are on, and because we're using simulation, and I know we talked about, oh my God, you mentioned it earlier. Intelligent creation, is that be called, or intelligent design?
Intelligent design, yeah.
Right. I'm going to kind of cross paths a little bit. Just because if we're play pretend, let's say we're in a simulation, it doesn't mean we're on God's computer up in heaven.
Well,
okay,
God
it doesn't necessarily mean that. Correct, right? I mean, we could be literally on anything, and that's what's weird. So the why is really difficult to answer. We could literally be a video game for somebody. We could be someone's PUBG right now. How weird is that?
As I've thought about the simulation theory a lot, and I think about it every time it comes up now, because it's coming up so much more frequently on a lot of the stuff that I listen to, I'll find myself, sitting on the toilet, right? Yeah. And just like really just maybe it's a rough day in the stomach and it's just coming out. I'm like, who the hell right now is paying to have this character with this chubby little belly? My hairline isn't receding that bad, but my body's
That's
like aching,
okay, buddy. You don't need any.
Down. Yeah, well, and I'm sitting there taking a dump and somebody's playing me as a character. Like this isn't, I mean, I guess people do it in other video games. They do some weird shit, but like, who the hell is spending their parents' money right now playing as this character? This is what you decided to play as? This is what you wanted?
Okay, so think about this for a second. Reality TV. You're a huge fan of the show Big Brother. Okay,
yes, of course.
We would essentially be Big Brother. We would be the characters. We would be living our life would be Big Brother. Exactly. We'd be living within it.
We're reality TV for somebody else.
Exactly.
There's theories out there too. The Truman Show, yeah, exactly. Well, that's a great point. Yeah, it could just be reality.
Yep.
There's a lot of other theories out there that if we are a simulation, it could be future humans running simulations to see how certain things will sort of unfold, right? Certain events, just like cataclysms.
Sure.
I guess elections, what happens if you do this, and that, any sort of combination of things that you can technically test out. And maybe our history is just sort of implanted in our minds and we're just living through this life. Again, like it feels really long for us, but maybe that's not necessarily the case. It's not really that bad. It could be entertainment, like you've said. It could be alien civilizations that have sort of planted us here. And the simulation is just, again, that intelligent design. I think less that we're a video game.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard to kind of bite into that. There's been the idea that it's like you remember the movie Avatar?
Yes. Never saw it, but I know the movie.
Yeah. So the movie Avatar, basically humans would put on these not suits, but like they'd go into these like chambers.
Were they the blue guys?
No, real humans like us would go in and they would take on the body of the blue guys, right? And they'd go live in the blue guys' world and they'd be like a blue guy in the blue guys world. And again, if they died in that, they could theoretically die outside of that. And there's another game called like Ready Player One, which was very much similar to that. Where like, you know, they put on these like VR headsets and they live within this world because their world is such shit.
That was a recent
and there's
movie,
been a
right?
lot of other shit. Yes, it's well,
Somewhat recent.
You know, not that
Somewhat
recent. Yeah,
recent.
maybe
Within the
last
past
10
5
years.
or so years, 10 years, yeah.
Probably a little more than 5, yeah. But there's other TV shows that are similar. There's one actually that just came out. It's got oh god, who's that girl? She was in Kick-Ass.
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Names. Oh god, no. Oh goodness gracious, I can't think of her name. Let me just look it up real quick because it's gonna bother me.
I don't know.
Kick-Ass
It's not
movie.
Ghislaine.
What was her name? Chloe Grace Moretz.
No idea who that
So
is.
yes, you do.
Dude, I don't watch TV. I watch sports. That's all I watch.
10,000 things.
I watch
across
sports
time.
and I watch documentaries. That's all I watch.
You've never seen this girl?
Hold on, I gotta make the browser bigger. Hold on, let me see. No, she looks similar to Sabrina Carpenter. That's all I know.
It's not Sabrina Carpenter. What's our new movie
I know it's
here?
not her,
The
but it looks
Peripheral,
like her.
right here. Oh, is this TV
Man,
show?
couldn't
It's
tell you.
2022. It must be canceled. Yeah, it must be canceled. Damn, that was a good one anyway. I really enjoyed that TV show. But basically, that was the same type of thing. Is like where they're jumping in, like they put on this like little headset device or whatever. They're jumping into this like alternate world, and they can live there. Like you can act and live there, and you know. When you leave, your character disappears, or maybe you just sit there. Maybe it's while you're sleeping. Maybe it's while you're taking a nap. Person's getting up to leave. That's why all of a sudden you feel tired. So, I mean, I think there's plausibility that it could be that too, where like maybe it's us just playing another character that we want to play. Again, I take that one with a little less grain of salt too, because
Yeah.
your lives mundane, and maybe your lives are mundane. And I don't think. I often don't put it in perspective, like some of the games that people play, like if you're playing The Sims or you're playing like World of Warcraft. And I mean, I played Ark for a really long time, and a lot of the game involved hacking up and grinding stuff, right? So it wasn't always that exciting, but there was some excitement. But you only get one life in this one, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
again, games have that too, where you have to restart from the beginning. So I find that one a little less hard to buy into. That's where I have a hard time wrapping my head around. But
Did you ever watch Black Mirror? You watch that show?
I have not. I've been told to for numerous reasons. But I've not watched that. No.
Well, I'll have to go on a deep dive when we're done with this as to what a great show it is and why you need to watch it. But there's a fantastic episode which the very first time ever Black Mirror is doing a sequel episode. It's called the USS Callister. I believe I'm saying that correctly. I believe it's called the USS Callister. And essentially, it is this guy who is a computer programmer, and he creates this own game, and he's able to actually take people from real life and insert them into the game. And then you're living inside of his simulated game. And when he's there, you have to be in character because and granted, because of the show and because of the episode, you know, he's, you know, like this big, no, I shouldn't say big, but he's a tyrannical leader, if you will, when he's present and in the game. And so you really have to like play your role. And as soon as he logs off, everybody's like, oh, Jesus Christ, thank God he's gone. It's awful. But you should watch that one. It's a really good one. Really pertains to what we're talking about.
I definitely have to get into Black Mirror. There's a lot of other seasons that I've heard were really good.
But it's really good.
That theme is carried out. WandaVision was a part of the Marvel universe where Scarlet Witch captivates this whole town and makes them live this like idyllic life that she wanted them all to be. So everybody is playing a role within her imagination, right? So that was another big one there. There was one other one that was just in my mind too. It slips it, but nevertheless, it's probably not too relevant to the point. When you say that, part of what my mind comes back to then too is if we are living in a simulation, and I'm saying like every sense of the word, the simulation, I can't help but think of like the Truman Show where like, either everybody else doesn't exist and you're like the main character, right? Because we were just talking earlier about, well, if you're not observing it, it doesn't exist. It's not rendered in yet, right? So does that mean that I'm in control and you're just a figment of my game? You don't exist. You're just like an ancillary piece to my game. And of course, like your mind, you're going to think the same thing about me, but how would we ever reconcile that? Because in my mind, the only reason your mind can even process that is because my mind is now thinking about that. And so I've thought about that too. And it's just like every piece of your life kind of hits differently, right? Like it's constructed, it's to interact with you, to shape the way you go. And then I look at things like, I was listening to a podcast, Chris Van Vliet, Insight, great podcast, pro wrestling, but they always often go off topic. But he was talking to Will Sasso. I think you know Will Sasso, actor.
I love Will Sasso. Phenomenal.
great actor, does a lot of voice impressions, but a huge pro wrestling fan.
He was on Mad TV back in the day.
Yep, absolutely. And now he's on Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage, Young Sheldon, which is a Big Bang Theory spinoff of a spinoff, tons of spinoffs. And he's great in it. But in any case, he's been on Chris Van Vliet's podcast a couple times. They're good friends, so they're always doing stuff. But he has a great Jesse Ventura impression, and so like the whole big thing is like Chris Van Vliet was talking about the story about how he had Will Sasso on the Jesse Ventura impression. He had a wrestler named Karrion Kross to do a Jesse Ventura impression, and the both of them sound exactly like Ventura. And so like they'd always have them then going back and forth, like who does the better one. In any case, Jesse Ventura at this point really wasn't doing much, but he started to get into media again soon, or recently. And his son reaches out to Chris on whatever platform it was and says, hey, you know, Jesse would love to do your podcast. He saw, you know, some of the clips, thinks it's hilarious, would love to do it. So Chris books a date with him like 6 months in advance because Jesse goes down to like the Baja and like he's off the grid for 6 months out of the year. So they book it out. The date they pick, WWE, where he's going out there, he's going to fly out to Minnesota, just so happens that that's the day that WWE is going to have Monday Night Raw in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, where Chris has already booked 6 months in advance, is flying out there to meet with Jesse Ventura. Who's at Monday Night Raw but this guy Karrion Kross, who he wasn't even on the show at the time. He got bumped to Raw. He was on SmackDown, so he would have been with a different travel group. So Chris calls him, has him come there, and then interview Jesse as Jesse Ventura. They have a little back and forth. But like his interview with Will Sasso, which just dropped a couple days ago, literally what they talk about is like, we have to live in a simulation. Like, what are the chances that you book an interview with a guy that doesn't do interviews in his hometown? The wrestling company comes there, and then one of the two guys that you've already interviewed that talks like him is there to talk. And they tried to call Will Sasso, but didn't take the call because he was busy. But like, so what are the chances of that happening? And there's so many things like that where like you think of somebody, right? And then all of a sudden they call you, or
that's like telepathy, baby. That's telepathy.
Well,
that's
so
one of the reasons. I don't want to knock you off your train of thought.
No.
That's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons why I don't believe in the simulation theory.
I believe in Joe Hendry. Well, so that's where it kind of comes full circle for me too, is we've talked about simulation theory on so many podcasts at this point, so many of our episodes on youtube.com/conspiracy realist and conspiracyrealist.com. Ooh, that's a great like and subscribe moment for us there.
It is.
And it's everything from like astral projection to this, right? Like it's across the board, to reincarnation.
Dreams. Just as simple as dreams. For me, dreams dispel the simulation theory.
Well, do they though? To me, they do. You and I have had this discussion a lot. I have very vivid dreams, and I can enter a dream and I continue living a life in that dream that feels very real. And I'm not saying like I'm living fragments. Like I can distinctly enter that dream and remember a past and curate, control my future, what I'm doing next. And I know remnants of that. Right now, I know aspects of that life. Like I know that storyline, and I know when I'm in that dream because like there's one variation of it, like my parents are still alive, right? Actually, like two different variations. Like one, my mother, one's just my father, one's both parents. Like I know the trajectory, conversations that I've had with them after they're dead, like just mind-boggling. And I distinctly remember those. And sometimes they're so vivid that like I wake up and I actually don't realize which world I'm in. Like that's how crazy it is. So yes, you're saying dreams, but like my dreams are saying that I'm either going to a parallel world, which is a multiverse idea, or I'm leaving my simulation and I'm going somewhere else. And this simulation for me is where they're both dead, right? Or where my father died first, my mother died later before she met my children. So like, I question that. Why would I be having to, or maybe I'm running multiple simulations and they're crossing over when I'm in low power mode because the code is splashing.
You raised some good points there, but I will ask you this question.
Yeah.
If we're in a simulation, how do we even have the ability to dream? Okay? Because and this might sound very dumb. It's just, I don't, does anybody really truly know? It's your mind, it's your brain. You're essentially just playing movies in your head.
Okay.
It's contained
What are the-
within you.
It's a hard drive in your head.
Okay, if you want to call your brain a hard drive, sure, we can do that. But that
That's all it is.
doesn't mean that we're in a simulation. To me, the fact that we have the ability to dream, right? So think about it from your perspective, from somebody who can write code.
Mhm.
How would, and granted, right? I'm sure conversely somebody could come and say, well, let me pose the question first.
Mhm.
If I'm going to write a code and we all exist in that code in this simulation, how do I then give you the ability to dream? It doesn't make any sense. It's too much of free will, right? We all have free will. I have the ability to get up and go punch a hole through the wall right now because I want to do it, right? I'm not going to. Don't feel like breaking my hand, but I have the ability to do it if I want, right? Now, I can write that into a code, one would think. I have the free will to get up and do that. But dreaming is so unique and so different and so completely uncontrolled. To me, it doesn't make sense that somebody could write that code to give you the ability to dream.
Remember I talked about Free Guy before?
Yes, sir.
When we go and play these video games, right? We'll play PUBG tonight. If we went back and we played that training mode, it was what? 8 live players? What were the rest of them?
Oh, they were bots. Yeah.
What were they doing?
I don't know. They were just running around, if I remember correctly. It's been a very long time since I played that.
And how did they make the decision to run around somewhere?
Well, they were pre-programmed. They were programmed to do so.
But they're
Right.
programmed to interact with their environments, right?
Sure.
You and I are very open about using Chat GPT and other AI type tools, whether it's Cloud or Grok, to help us do our research for a lot of episodes because it's quick facts, right? You can get a cursory overview on top of some of the in-depth stuff we'll do from documentaries or other podcasts. But with those tools themselves, how do you think they're learning?
Well, it's
Are they
machine learning.
Oh, it's
I mean,
machine learning.
they're just learning from what we input,
What does it
right?
do?
So from all the shit that we've put out there on the internet, it's just grabbing all of that at a very quick pace, is it not?
It's right, but what is it doing?
I don't know. What is it doing?
Do you think
I thought
somebody's
I just
sitting
said
there
that.
coding that? Traditionally,
not.
before, the reason this didn't exist before, because we've always had machine learning, the reason it didn't exist
Sure.
before is because in order for you to create something like this, to type something in and spit something out, a search engine, what had to happen to make a search engine work? Somebody had to create it and post the content.
Sure.
It doesn't have to happen now. Now, all you're doing is you wrote code to tell this program that all you want it to do is to read the parameters of what it needs to know and formulate an opinion. And the more it does that, you're going to tell it you're right, you're wrong, you're right, you're wrong. Good, elaborate, go deeper, rethink this. Every time somebody engages with it, it learns. And so somebody's now not writing that information anymore. Now it's writing itself. And that's the fear of AI, is that we are machine learning models right now. At some point, you're going to reach what's called artificial general intelligence, which means it becomes sentient. It can now make determinations to say, well, I can optimize myself by doing this. And that's something you can tell it do right now. Optimize. I mean, there is a program called Cursor AI, which my team is starting to use right now, which is built on VS Code. It's a coding platform, right? Just regular code, but now they have AI integrated in it. And you can literally talk to it and say, and I did it a day ago. Look at this code, optimize it. And it ran through every page of code that we had across file folders. And it itemized it. This looks like it's dead code. This looks like it'd be rewritten here. This looks like it'd be cleaned up, blah, 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 blah. What's to stop you from writing another script that says, I want you to do this every week? Then I want you to optimize yourself. You're not writing anything anymore.
Sure.
You start to become sentient. And so that's why I used Free Guy as an example too. I know you didn't watch it, but I know a lot of people out there did, is the Free Guy, blue shirt guy. Shout out to our boy Todd Feehan. That's where he got his Twitter name from. Blue shirt guy started to become sentient. He started to ask why. Why do I get up and do the exact same thing every day? Why does that woman look for her cats every single day? Why do those people come in here and shoot us down every single day? Why do they rob us every day? There's got to be something different. And then he stepped out of it. And then he started doing his own thing. He was having dreams of this mystical place. He was having daydreams, and then he was dreaming about it at night. He was reliving the same day because that's how he was programmed, until something triggered something to switch. If we're talking about a movie, and then we're going back to No Man's Sky, and we're talking about a 10 gigabyte or less game, right, where you can create these expansive worlds, what's to say that we can't blow that up?
Sure.
Think about your DNA. Again, I use our brain as a hard drive. That's all it is. DNA is encoded, right? It's just encoded information on a strand of DNA, which is microscopic. You won't even be able to see it. It can store enough information to hold all of the world's books ever written, all time. It can hold all the pictures and videos you've ever taken, that anybody's ever taken, of all time. It can hold all this information and still have room on a strand of DNA. Why? You do it on a crystal. Like
Right.
crystals, like earthly devices here, crystals. And that's where quantum computing is going. They're going to be basically betting into crystals. It's buy stock in crystal, I guess.
Yeah. Wasn't that something with like did you ever hear about, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I remember watching something on, the crystal skulls?
Yes.
And their ability to
Exactly.
actually store data.
It's grounded in science. The crystal skulls themselves, I believe, are probably a myth. That'll be a nice episode we could do.
Yeah.
I'm almost positive all of them are a myth, but that is grounded in reality, that the type of crystal, whatever it was, I forgot the specific one. I'm not a geologist here, but that can store all of the world's history's data, everything that's ever existed in there. And DNA can do the same thing effectively. But crystal is tangible that we can touch. So why is it implausible to think that if our DNA, which makes us up, can store so much information, that whatever's operating our Earth isn't the same thing? Is that why, Fermi's paradox, like there are no aliens out there? Is that why nobody's
Right.
come and visit us? Because maybe it just doesn't exist.
I struggle with Fermi's paradox because it's theoretical. It's again,
Everything's
it's just
theoretical. Right.
I know. I mean, this is my problem with things theoretical, and we need theoretical thinkers. We need theory because that's how we discover new things. I'm not shitting on that per se. My problem with taking it at its word is you don't know that, dude.
Speculative,
It's a
yeah.
great thought. It's a phenomenal thought. Thank God you had it, because that spurred many other smart people to have many other thoughts. So I'm
Right.
glad that Fermi's paradox exists, but you don't know that. And I don't mean you, I'm talking about Fermi's. You don't know that. Like, prove it. Prove it to me. You can't. You can't. And because I'm analytical and because you can't prove it to me, I'm not taking it as my Bible. I can't. I just can't get myself to do it.
Well, that used to be one of the great things about science, is you used to be able to have discourse and say those types of things, and things have changed over the last several years, hopefully going back to normalcy. But I think you're right in that. And it's one of the qualms, I guess, I've had with science, and sometimes is like we build our science around these hypotheses, which for all intents and purposes make sense, right? Like you're trying to fill a gap. But
Sure.
that's what you're just trying to fill a gap. You're trying to explain something you don't know, right? Like it just how, right? Like
Right.
if you and oftentimes, and this goes, a broader conversation in education, but oftentimes you're taught with these preconceived notions, and people spend their whole, and this is the whole problem with conspiracies in general, is like you spend your whole lives believing this because of that, right? And as soon as you break that, it throws everything into a tizzy, and people don't want to break that because it's a safe answer, right? Like Fermi's paradox is a
Right.
safe answer. It explains why there's no aliens here. Well, you've got to think of a couple things. Well, one, simulation theory is obviously a theory right here. Two, what if there literally isn't? We are just one in a billion, bazillion, quadrillion, whatever the big number is, one in a Googleplex chance that life exists. That's it. What if there is no universe beyond us? This is our solar system is the universe. That's it. Or what if we're the first? Why
Yeah.
is it so hard to believe that we're not the first? And I would say
true.
the same thing too with like the age of the Earth. It's hypothetical, man. Like
I was
yes,
right.
they-
Exactly.
they say they have ways to do that, but you can't prove that any of your carbon dating, or I guess carbon dating you can, but you can't prove that all these dating mechanisms work. You can't prove it. You're
Right.
guessing. You're guessing
just
on
like
a
the-
small
it's-
sample
yeah.
size.
It's just
a
like
grain
the
of sand
Big
and a
Bang
beach.
Theory.
Right.
Yeah. It's like the
Also
Big Bang
Big
Theory,
Bang.
and I'm not talking about your favorite show. I'm
Great
talking
great
about
show.
the Big Bang Theory, right? It's a theory for a reason. We just don't know.
Yep.
It's a good idea. It's probably the best one that we have currently, but it's an idea. And that's all those things are. And that's why it's really tough for me to truly get behind them, because there are infinite number of possibilities and outcomes.
I mean, infinite numbers of possibilities and outcomes, man. That sounds like a lot of No Man's Sky. It sounds like a simulation. It sounds like a video game.
So how about telepathy? I know we got to wrap this up soon, but what about telepathy, right? So have you listened to the telepathy tapes, or have you seen, oh my God, what is his name? I think it's Kai Dickens. I think it's on my phone.
I've literally no idea what you're talking about. So
So she was very recent episode on Rogan. I don't know if I'm saying her name correctly. Kai Dickens, that's what I'm going to call her. Sorry, Kai, if I'm mispronouncing your name. So she has a series called the Telepathy Tapes. She's actually, I believe, making a documentary about it, where she works with non-verbal people, non-speakers who have to actually spell things out. There's disassociation. They have a very difficult time utilizing their body. They don't feel attached to their body. They can't verbally speak, so they have to spell things out. And so within working with these people, she has found that telepathy is real. It is a real, and now granted, I'm taking her word for it. I didn't sit in on these interviews, and I didn't, right? But according to her, they were real. There are many teachers throughout the world, a lot of speech pathologists who work with these people who are nonverbal, these non-speakers that need to spell things out, and they're basically saying like telepathy. They're literally reading my mind. This student of mine is reading my mind. She goes in so in depth to say that some of these teachers do full lessons telepathically. They don't speak at all. There are no words written down. It is completely in their mind, right? So granted, you have to play pretend with me for a second.
Yeah.
Right? You have to play pretend with me for a second and say that, okay, that's real. So if that is real, again, I have just a very tough time saying that we're in a simulation, because why would the creator of the simulation, or I shouldn't say why, how would the creator of the simulation give these people the ability to do that? Granted, you could in a very simple term say it's written into the code. Okay, sure, yeah. But I have a very tough time getting behind that.
what does it mean to you when I say up, up, down, down, left, right, A, B, A, B?
Oh, it sounded like something I used to do in Mortal Kombat or some shit like that.
It's a cheat code for Nintendo. It's cheat codes, man. I mean, it's in every video game you out there. There's ways to kind of hack the system. There's ways to break into it. So that's certainly an option. The other option would be is let's say we are living in a video game, and I'm not endorsing the fact that we are. I'm not sure, but I'm trying to play devil's advocate a little bit here. Let's say we are living in a video game. I mean, you play a lot of PUBG, so maybe this isn't relevant to that. But what about when you play Black Ops? What happens every time you play? Level up.
Yeah.
Level up a little bit more, and then you unlock new skills. You unlock new abilities. I think a lot of the times, and this goes to a broader conversation on life, is people get very complacent, right? And nobody really wants to push the boundaries. And it goes back to what we've talked about with science too. Sometimes we kind of intentionally or unintentionally kind of suppress a lot of our abilities. In our previous episodes, we've talked about kids and their kind of innate ability to have these psychic powers, and then all of a sudden it gets suppressed. So I believe in those types of things and the ideas of psychics and astral projection, obviously reincarnation, what we've talked about before too.
Yep.
How do all these things happen? Maybe there are other simulations. Maybe people are tapping into kind of that next level. Maybe they are just glitches. Or maybe they're not really happening at all, right? Maybe it's just part of your simulation and it's giving you that context because it's allowing you to kind of go down this path on whatever your new mission is going to be, right? So that's part of what you're going to, well, you're interested in this stuff now. So that's part of your path. You're going to learn about this and you're going to dig into it, and it's going to make you a more critical thinker by looking into it. I don't know. I don't think there's any one thing, any superpower, any concept, any theory that can definitively or even partially prove or disprove the idea of a simulation. Again, extracting the word simulation out of it, thinking intelligently designed. I don't think that we're being controlled. I don't think somebody's flicking some joysticks as I'm moving my hands. I don't know if it's in the camera shot, moving my hands back and forth. I don't think that's the case.
Nor do I.
I think that if this is some degree of a simulation, I think it is every bit of word of that is we are some sort of an artificial intelligence, or intelligence doesn't have to necessarily be artificial, but at some degree you were created. We are some sort of an intelligently designed creation that was put here. The objective, I don't know. Maybe there is none. Maybe it was just for fun. Maybe, like you said, it's entertainment, and there's hidden cameras just baked into the cellular structure of the walls around us, right? Or maybe they are just trying to observe and see what happens when you take some cavemen and give them a little bit of technology and watch how fast things jump up. Like, that simulation could be a real life simulation by a super technologically advanced alien civilization, where, like, I heard something really great actually today on Richard Serrett with a guest that I hope maybe we can get. It was more about like other alien civilizations, but one of the things they talked about was, and I forgot what her name is off the top of my head, but one of the things she had mentioned was that they say God created the earth in 6 days?
Yes, and he rested on the seventh.
Rested on the seventh. But she said, we're thinking about Earth days, right? 6 days for an alien civilization could mean 6 million years or 6 billion years.
Sure.
Where the Earth, if you think about the Big Bang Theory, was created over a period of time until it created life. What's to say that the days, the context of time, the perception of that time, perception, again, that word comes back full circle. What's to say that perception of time isn't completely different for another civilization? And so our lifespan seems really long to us because, this is only a short period of time that we're here. But for something else, it's a drop. It's like a mosquito that lives for a week. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That mosquito just lived a full life for them. Or your dog. They say dog years is every 7 years for a human year. So there's, again, perception of what the duration of your lifespan really changes your perception of what a period of time is. And what do we always say as you get older? It's like, shit, time flew. You don't realize how fast it goes. Well, maybe for these civilizations, like, they've got thousands or millions of years that they can live. So what's 100 years? What's a couple hundred years for them to see what happens with this civilization? It's a video game. They're watching. It's a TV show. It's one season. Something to think about.
It's an interesting thought. And to that I say,
do you feel
bring us home, Cocktail Man.
stronger, or you feel stronger, weaker, any direction? Just kind of back where you are.
I think I kind of feel the same. I think I feel the same. I'd put it in that bucket. I think I feel the same. It's a fun topic. It's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
I enjoyed our conversation. It's a very difficult one. You could freak yourself out. I know I can. I could really freak myself out.
I've done it before.
Dude, I could almost set myself into a full panic attack thinking about this shit. Like, you know what I mean? When you really start to like deeply think about it, like, I gotta step back. But it's
I think that's
why
people go down like the roads of like the DMT and the ayahuasca and like all these spiritual journeys, because I think you get to a point where, and maybe these people are loonies and maybe that's why they go loony, but you get to a point where, like, if you want to be able to conceptualize this stuff, you have to become more spiritual. You have to kind of like separate yourself. There just might not be a way to put you back together. So tough one to walk. Is that it?
Well,
that's all you get.
That's it. That's what I got. Right. That's what I got for you.
This is as good as opportunity as any to remind each of you, whether you're living in a simulation or not. And I guess for the sake of this, you must not be, because if you were living in a simulation and I was in control, like I think I might be, I'd be taking your little fingers and pressing that like and that subscribe button, that follow button if you're on Spotify or Rumble. I'd be leaving a little comment or 5-star rating on Spotify, which is another
that's
good
a good
one.
idea. I like that one.
YouTube, share that out. Grab your friend's phone, your sister's phone, your brother's phone, your mother's phone, whoever's phone you got access to. Just give them a little like, a little subscribe on that channel. And again, conspiracyrealist.com for all other social channels, Instagram, Facebook, X. I think that's all the big ones, right? All the main ones.
All the big ones, baby. Rumble.
Or wherever you consume your media, we are there. We appreciate your support. Until next time, everyone, we're just going to give you another one of our catchphrases from our song here. We're going to make this happen. We're going to make it work. But raise your glass to mysteries, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of Cocktails and Conspiracies. We'll see you next time.